When I opened my old locker, there was something inside that shouldn't exist anymore. That's the sentence that's been replaying in my head for months now. I can't explain it, at least not in a way that makes sense. But maybe if I tell the whole story, you'll understand why I haven't set foot near that school since that night. It started with a reunion. 10 years after graduation, our old high school decided to host a celebration of alumni. Emails went out, a few familiar faces reconnected on social media, and I got caught in that wave of nostalgia. At the time, it seemed harmless. I hadn't thought about Lincoln High in years. The yellowed hallways, the buzzing fluorescent lights, the smell of floor wax and teenage sweat. It was just another chapter of life I thought I'd closed long ago. But when the invitation came through, something tugged at me. Maybe curiosity, maybe guilt. So I went. When I pulled into the parking lot that evening, the sky was already dimming, washed in pale orange. The school looked smaller somehow, like the years had shrunk it. Inside, the same trophy cases lined the hall. My sneakers echoed on the freshly polished floor. They'd kept everything the same. Even the faded blue lockers still stood in long, perfect rows. It felt frozen in time, like the building hadn't accepted that we'd all moved on. People were already gathered in the cafeteria, chatting and laughing in clusters. I tried to join in, but after a while, the nostalgia felt heavy, almost oppressive. So I wandered off. Maybe that was my mistake. The second floor hallway was empty. I passed the science rooms, the gym doors, then turned into the wing where my locker used to be. Row 3, number 2 of 14. I don't know why I still remembered the number, but I did. And when I found it, I stopped cold. It was open, not broken, not damaged, just open, as if I'd stepped away minutes ago. Inside were papers, old notebooks, even a photo tacked to the inside of the door. Me and a couple of friends. Our faces blurred from time. But the thing that froze me was the combination lock still hanging there. I used to have one of those old rotary locks. The kind you twist, left, right, left. The same one I threw out after graduation. This one was identical. Same scratches, same rust spot near the top. And somehow, it was still set to my old combination. I stared at it, trying to laugh it off. Maybe someone found it years ago, thought it'd be funny to hang here again. But something about it felt wrong. The air was colder in that hallway, like the vents had stopped working. And the smell. There was that faint metallic tang, like rain on iron. That's when I noticed the reflection. In the tiny mirror, still taped to the inside of the door, I could see my own face. But behind me, for just a moment, I swear I saw someone else standing in the hallway. When I turned, there was no one there. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was just seeing things, but that moment stayed with me for the rest of the night. Even during the reunion dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about that locker and why it was still waiting for me after all these years. That's why I went back the next night, and that's when everything started to unravel. I told myself I was just curious, that's all. But deep down, I think I wanted to prove to myself that what I saw was nothing, a trick of bad lighting, maybe nostalgia, warping my mind. So the next night, I drove back to Lincoln High. It was empty, of course. The reunion had ended. But I knew the janitor's schedule. They left one side door open until 10 p.m. for after-hours cleaning. The parking lot was deserted, and the building loomed over me, silent and pale under the security lights. When I stepped inside, the air was colder than I remembered. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, flickering occasionally, like they were struggling to stay awake. My footsteps echoed through the same hallway. The smell of wax, the faint chemical sting of bleach. Everything looked identical to the night before, except quieter. Too quiet. The second floor was darker. I used my phone flashlight, its beam slicing through dust particles that hung suspended like ghosts. Locker 214 was still open. This time, I noticed something new. Inside the locker, the notebooks and photos had been rearranged. I knew because the photo of me and my friends, the one that had been pinned crooked on the door, was now perfectly straight, and below it, someone had laid a single yellow pencil across the shelf, perfectly centered. It wasn't there before. I don't know why, but that tiny detail filled me with unease. It felt intentional, like whoever had been there was showing me they could touch things that belonged to me. I reached for the pencil, hesitated, then picked it up. It was brand new, but along one side, written faintly in black marker, were words I hadn't seen in a decade. Mr. Lewis, room 104, my old English teacher. He used to label all the classroom pencils like that, but he de-retired years ago, and I heard he passed away not long after. I froze, holding it. The hall suddenly felt heavier, like the air itself was pressing against me. That's when I heard it, a faint clicking noise. Metal against metal, rhythmic and slow, like someone turning a combination lock. I stepped back, scanning the hallway with my phone light. The sound was coming from somewhere nearby, 3 lockers down, maybe 4. Click, click, click. It stopped the moment I turned the corner. I waited, holding my breath, the hum of the lights sounding like whispers. Then, from behind me, the sound started again, right where I'd been standing seconds earlier. Click, click, click. I spun around. Nothing, just rows of metal doors stretching into darkness. I didn't want to look at my locker again, but my eyes drifted there anyway. The lock was now spinning slowly on its own, not fast, not violently, just a calm, deliberate rotation, left, right, left again, as if someone invisible was testing the combination. Then it stopped. A faint metallic clunk. Unlocked. The door creaked open wider, hinges squealing softly, and from inside came the smell of something faintly rotten, like wet paper and mold. I stepped closer, raising the flashlight. There was something new taped inside. A small, folded piece of lined notebook paper, old and yellowed. On it, in shaky handwriting that I recognized as my own, were the words, "You shouldn't have come back." My heart started pounding. I dropped the note and backed away, eyes scanning every direction. The hallway was still empty, but I could feel the presence of someone watching. I grabbed the lock, twisted it shut, and bolted for the stairs. As I reached the bottom, I could swear I heard the sound of a locker slamming somewhere behind me. Once, loud, echoing. I didn't turn around. That should have been the end of it. I should have left it alone. But when I got home later that night and emptied my jacket pocket, something fell out onto the floor. It was that same yellow pencil. Only now, it had words carved into the wood, deep enough that splinters showed. "See you tomorrow." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that locker, the darkness inside it, the faint smell of decay, and those words carved into the pencil. By 3 a.m., I had convinced myself it had to be a prank. Maybe someone from the reunion remembered which locker used to be mine. Maybe they were trying to mess with me. That idea gave me enough courage, or stupidity, to go back the next day. But this time, I didn't go alone. I called my old friend Derek, one of the guys from our group photo. He still lived nearby, and he was always the skeptic among us. When I told him what had happened, he laughed until he realized I wasn't joking. "Man, that's messed up," he said. "But you sure you're not just remembering wrong? You know how places look different when you've been away that long." "I'm sure," I told him. "The lock. It opened by itself, Derek." He went quiet for a second. Then, with a nervous laugh, he said, "All right, I'll come. But if I end up in some ghost documentary, I'm blaming you." We got to the school just before sunset. The janitor recognized us. Same old guy, beard streaked with gray, and let us in, shaking his head. "You kids never get tired of haunting this place," he muttered. I didn't even answer. When we reached the second floor, the air felt thick again, stale and cold. The hum of the old lights was softer this time, like the building itself was holding its breath. Locker 214 stood ahead of us, door slightly ajar again. I hadn't touched it since last night. Derek nudged me. "Go on, open it. Let's end this mystery." I pulled the door fully open. Everything inside was rearranged again. The notebooks were stacked neatly. The photo was gone, and at the very back of the locker was a small Polaroid, freshly developed, glossy, and cold to the touch. I turned it over. It was a picture of me and Derek, standing exactly where we were now, in front of the locker. But the picture wasn't from that moment. It was darker, grainier, like it had been taken hours earlier, before we even arrived. My stomach dropped. This isn't possible." Derek frowned and held the photo under the light. "Who took this? There's no one else here." Then he froze. "Wait, look closer." In the photo, behind us, the locker door was open, and someone was standing inside it, a face, half-shadowed, pale, the same black hoodie I'd worn in my senior year photo. But the face was mine. Derek swore and stumbled back. I dropped the picture. A metallic creak echoed down the hallway, like another locker slowly opening. Then another. Clang, clang, clang. Doors were unlatching, one by one, in both directions. An invisible chain reaction. The sound grew louder, closer, until it felt like the entire hallway was breathing. Derek grabbed my arm. "We're leaving. Now." We sprinted down the stairs. The lights flickered violently, buzzing like hornets. Halfway to the exit, I turned my head just once, and through the second-floor window, I saw movement. A figure standing perfectly still beside my locker, its head tilted slightly downward, watching. It looked exactly like me. We didn't stop running until we reached the parking lot. Neither of us spoke the entire drive home. When Derek dropped me off, he looked pale. "I don't know what the hell that was, man. But don't go back there. Promise me." I promised. And I meant it. The next morning, I got a call from the school. They said the janitor was found unconscious near the second-floor hallway. No forced entry. No explanation. But he'd been clutching something tightly in his hand. When they pried it open, they found a Polaroid of me, standing in front of the locker, smiling. For days, I tried to pretend it hadn't happened. I told myself it was some elaborate prank, that the photo was old, that the janitor incident was coincidence. But deep down, I knew something had followed me home. It started small, the faint scent of bleach, that same school hallway smell, drifting through my apartment at night. Then came the metallic clicking, slow, deliberate, like someone turning a lock. At first, I thought it was the pipes, or maybe my neighbor's door. But one night, around 2 a.m., I heard it right outside my bedroom. Click, 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 clunk. I froze. That last sound, the soft metallic release, was unmistakable. The sound of a locker door unlatching. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. The air felt thick, humid. From the foot of my bed came a faint creak, like metal shifting under pressure. When I turned on the lamp, I saw it, a small dent in the wall, shaped exactly like the corner of a locker door. The next morning, I packed a bag and went to stay with Derek. He didn't laugh this time. He just looked at me with the same fear I'd seen on his face that night. He admitted something then. The night after we'd gone to the school, he'd found a photo slipped under his apartment door. A Polaroid. It showed him sleeping, taken from inside his room. I felt sick. Did you see anyone? He shook his head. No, but the window was open. We called the school office that afternoon, trying to find out what happened to the janitor. They told us he'd been moved to intensive care, still unconscious. The only thing he'd said, murmured in his sleep, was a single word: locker. That evening, I made one final mistake. I decided to destroy whatever was still left of that locker, to end it once and for all. I went back to Lincoln High alone. The halls were darker than ever, the air heavy with that damp, chalky smell. When I reached the second floor, I noticed something immediately. Every single locker was closed, except one, mine. Locker 214 stood wide open, waiting. I could see a single Polaroid inside, pinned to the back wall. It was angled slightly downward, like whoever had placed it there wanted me to look up at it. I stepped closer. The picture showed the inside of my bedroom, my bed, my nightstand, and me, lying there, asleep. But behind me, half visible in the dark reflection of the window, was the faint outline of a locker door. That was enough. I ran. I don't even remember how I got to my car. I moved apartments the next week, left town, and never spoke about Lincoln High again. Derek moved too. We stopped talking soon after. Neither of us could handle the reminder. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it, that soft metallic clicking, faint but steady, somewhere behind the wall. And when it stops, I can smell bleach